In a first for the AmaZulu nation, a court battle will set a precedent on how the rule of law, culture and traditions can coexist. The Pietermaritzburg High Court earlier this week reversed its judgment, or reserved its judgment, I beg your pardon, on that case that will determine who will be the next AmaZulu king. One of late King Goodwill Zwelithini's wives, that's Queen Sibongile Dlamini-Zulu, is seeking to be recognized as the only legally married spouse. A separate legal challenge by the king's daughters is also seeking to interdict the coronation of King Misuzulu, arguing that the late king's will was actually forged. Let's distill all of this for you now, get you a sense of what this means, not only for the AmaZulu nation, but for other traditional monarchs in the country. Founder and president of the Umsamo Institute is Dr. Velaphi Mkhize, who joins us now via our video link. Dr. Mkhize, it's great to have you on. Thanks for your time and patience. You know, this apparent tension between culture and traditions in monarchs, it's not new, is it?
Thank you very much to you as well as to the viewers. First of all, you're 100% correct. It is not new. Let me give you a little bit of history. The first king was King Shaka, and who was actually assassinated by his brothers Dingaan and Mhlanga. And Dingaan became a king after Shaka. That was through a blood war. The next king was Mbande, and Mbande appointed his own son, Cetshwayo, to take over to be a king. There was no dispute, there was no letter, there was nothing. Now, Cetshwayo appointed Dinizulu. That was the beginning of a letter, the beginning of a word written on a white paper, as we see it today. Dinizulu was appointed by his father Cetshwayo through a letter. And after that, Dinizulu had three sons. He had Nyawane, and he had Solomon, and he had Mshieni. Again, to appoint the successor of Dinizulu, it was done through a letter. And that letter, actually, Solomon was assisted by a white lady, of which I can't remember the name, who seemingly was a legal advisor or an attorney in one way or another. But the person who actually said, no, there is a letter which is actually appointing Solomon to become a king, was David, who was part of the royal family. And then it continued and continued. Also Solomon appointed Zulu through a letter. Now, King Zwelithini, as he was prophesied by a woman from Johannesburg who was from a Zionist church and so on and so on, we can't get into that. Also, it was not an easy sailing again into to become a king of the Zulu nation, because there was an appointment of Thandaipi, and Thandaipi was appointed through a letter, of which later on Gilbert came forward and said, no, there is a letter which is actually appointing, not Thandaipi, because remember, before the late king took power, it was Prince Mshieni who actually acted. So thereafter, it was again the letter that actually showed that. Now, it looks as if this is a continuation. The will is a written word on a white paper. Right. So in other words, again, it's a letter which is actually giving the powers to Misuzulu as we see it today. It's unfortunate to the nation that I must spell this one out, because we are finding this thing going into the court, whereas we are having people, of which I can call in inverted commas, the libraries is in Molobane, who are still existing today, who can be consulted. We are looking only at one person who knows the history, who knows what should be done, and who knows what should be the protocol. We only know of Inkosi, the Prince Buthelezi, whereas there are a number of other people. We have Philemon Dinizulu's there. He's very old enough. At the 90s, he knows everything, the whole history. We have also Queen Tombela, Pilile. These are the people. And we have Umazungu, who is actually the late king's mother's sister, who is actually sitting there with all the history. So these are the people who have been consulted, and also the mediation process be done rather than to go to the courts. Yeah,
it's an interesting thing you're mentioning of Izingolobane, because on the one hand, we've got a situation where we know the AmaZulu royal house has intricate ties with government, but on the other, there is a need to give traditional spaces space to do what needs to be done. These two seem to be at loggerheads in some instance, and I guess part of what is taking place in this process is trying to find some kind of equilibrium.
You see, you are mentioning a very interesting thing when we talk about the government. Now, you see, when we speak of Shaga, Dingan, Bande, Fetwayo, Dinizulu, and so on right now, the government, yes, there was a little bit of interference, but there was that ear that was actually listening to them on what they are saying. I think today it is worse. And I knew when the late king passed away that there will be a problem because there is a lot of interest that is coming from the government rather than coming from the people. I think there are actual individual interests which are actually involved here. I'll tell you why. For instance, for the king to go and be part of the parliament, it was a struggle. And the king left the story of the land. He was actually, there was this Ingonyama Trust land and so on. Secondly, he was actually starting to revive various rituals of the Zulu nation, Isandlwane, Umhlanga, and so on. And therefore, if now the royal family knows exactly that Misuzulu should be the next successor because he is born by a Mantombi and Mantombi's lobolo was paid by the nation. 200 patents were actually paid. And that actually qualifies him for that. It is known in the history. It is known with Nolobane. So why the fighting? It means there are people who are properly. So my argument is that, and my request is that the government must move away. Let these people talk. That is why you find Prince Hospital is being blamed now and again. He's not being blamed by the people. He is blamed by the people who are used by the government inside the government of the province.
Sure. Interesting that. The element around Queen Sibongile Dlamini-Zulu is also quite intriguing. What she is suggesting, it appears, and you'll set me straight if I've got this wrong, is that her marriage, a legal marriage, so to speak, if I may, that is the only legitimate one, and on those grounds, she should be the one that receives half of the king's estate, whilst the other marriages happened customarily. This dynamic, how unprecedented is it?
Baba, thank you so much. That is Zulu, you know it exactly. Umfazi wephepha akekho. Umfazi wephepha akekho. Umfazi uthelwa ngenyongo aqhathiswe. But all of these wives, bonke oNdlunkulu bayathelwa ngenyongo. Now, Sibongile Dlamini was married under civil marriage, all right? And also, she enjoyed the customary marriage, which is umtata. And she was followed by Ogamate, Wakadlamahlahla, who was actually married under customary marriage, wathelwa ngenyongo. She was followed by Mantombi, who is from the royal family of Swaziland, from the Sokuza family.
Right.
And so on and so on and so on. All of them were actually married in the customary marriage. So for her to say, I am actually the only and the only wife, I think, according to the Zulu tradition, to me, I won't say it's wrong, it's unacceptable. Because even myself, if my wife, I married her through e-paper, she is not a wife. Even my kids can't use her surname. I mean, my surname, she can use her own surname. So these are the problems that gives our people in the country at this point in time. So I think her argument that these other marriages are out and so on, for me, is unacceptable. For me, it's the new way that we have to start teaching our youngsters what is marriage, what is civil marriage, what is civil union, what is a customary marriage, and so on.
Yeah. As you've already pointed out, the institution, that is the AmaZulu Royal House, has multiple stakeholders. Some of them lie in the state itself. In our coverage of the court case, there were people who gathered outside the Pietermaritzburg High Court in support of Misuzulu. What they were saying is that without the people, there is no nation. There is no monarch really to speak of. So with that in mind, I mean, where do you reckon the ultimate decision actually lies in whatever discord takes place, no matter how the court finds?
Okay. Let me start about my own thinking. One, there is no case in this issue because the ladies actually who are actually fighting, supporting Sibongile, well, I'm not sure about the other one is married. So once you are married, you have no say in the affairs of your home. You belong now to the family where you are married. That's the first issue. The second issue is that Misuzulu, as I've indicated, he is actually coming from a mother whose lobola was paid by the nation. That's the second thing. The third thing, whether the letter is wrong or right or whatever, he actually qualifies. It's a different story to prove whether it's wrong or right. The fourth point is that the royal house has got its own council, which actually must mediate these issues and so on. So based on those four things, I think the judge, as I know him, I know Madondo very well. He is an expert in customary marriage. He has published books on this. He will dismiss this case. He will actually say, go back and do mediation, or he will say, I find Misuzulu to be the king, because other arguments can't hold water. And the other thing, we must be careful. Who are they presenting to be a king? Therefore, if we don't accept Misuzulu, because we must check, the one that they are presenting, is he born like Misuzulu in a fully customary marriage or in a full marriage, or is this someone maybe whose mother was never actually married by the king or whatever the case may be? Those are a lot of dynamics. We will hear here a number of things. For instance, you know why they're kicking out Nkosi Buthelezi? It's because he spelled out some of the things about the two people who were actually bringing this argument forward. And he was relying on the custom. He was relying on the tradition. And that's why they're kicking him out. Because now he's coming with solid issues. Therefore, those are the things that I can say. One, it might be kicked out, dismiss the case. And secondly, he might say that let them go and do their own mediation in the council, and then they go forward.
Interesting dynamics as we watch the story unfold. Thank you so much for your insights. Really do appreciate it this morning on the AM Report. Dr. Mkhize, a historian, also the founder of the Umsamo Institute. Once again, thanks very much indeed.